ora, and welcome to Cinema in Context, where we discuss all things film and the connections between. My name is Sarah Watt.
I'm William Chen.
And I'm Jeremy Downing.
And each month at Cinema in Context, we discuss two films, one current and one retrospective, with some connection. Now, it could be they have the same director, a same actor, or a similar theme. Now, this month, we're discussing The Creator, which came out this year, 2023, and Children of Men, which was released in 2006. The connection being that both of them are dystopian sci-fi movies set in a nearish future in which the protagonist male must escort a young woman across war-torn lands.
Nice.
Now, Jeremy, would you like to kick us off with a description of Children of Men? Because I believe you know this film fairly well.
I do, dear listeners. I teach a media studies class to high school students, and this is one of the select films that we have watched this year. But beyond watching it with my students, I'm a huge fan of this movie, so I've watched it a lot of times. Children of Men, I believe, is based on a book, and it's directed by Alfonso Cuarón. It stars Clive Owen and Julianne Moore, as well as Michael Caine and a number of other great actors. Clive Owen plays Theo, I think it's fair to say, depressed, middle-aged man living in a world that has lost hope. The world has lost hope because people are no longer able to have children. And so the children of men, one might read, is the hopelessness that ensues when women can no longer have babies. Theo has an ex-wife who is played by Julianne Moore. She's part of a rebel crew who are trying to bring voice and awareness to the treatment of refugees in, I guess, the United Kingdom, London,
yes,
England,
it is, yeah.
Wherever the borders lie in this new world. And he gets called in by her to help get a young woman across the border. And relatively early in the film, we discover that she is in fact pregnant. She's a refugee, she's pregnant, and she is also a potential political kind of chess piece. And Theo is seen by his ex-wife as being one of the few people that will actually look out for her and her needs. And so what ensues is, as Sarah described, a story about Theo and the young Key trying to navigate their way through a volatile, war-torn near future to some form of safety.
Thanks, Jeremy. William, can we rely upon you to tell us what the heck The Creator is about?
Of course. The Creator is the latest film from director Gareth Edwards. Not Evans. I keep getting that mixed up.
Yeah, so do I.
Yes, Evans makes kick-ass action films, mostly starring Indonesians. Edwards makes sci-fi epics with amazing visuals and endings that don't quite make sense. So, The Creator is a ostensibly original sci-fi movie starring John David Washington as Josh, an ex-soldier in a world where AI has been normalized, so the use of robots and artificial intelligence is very much a part of society until one day the Terminator future happens and AI unleashes a nuclear bomb on the United States, which kind of divides the world into mostly what they call in the movie New Asia, which is very pro-AI and pro-integration, and the US and its allies, which want to wipe AI from the face of the earth. In the middle is caught Josh, so Mr. Washington's character, as he attempts to extract a young AI girl from New Asia while hot on their heels, the US military and the entire force of their arsenal is after them.
Awesome. Thank you both, gentlemen. And readers, listeners, watchers, as I like to call you. It's worth noting that there will be spoilers in our podcasts. The assumption being that it's difficult to talk about these films properly if you can't talk about them in great detail. So if you're thinking that you would really love to watch The Creator and you haven't already, then you need to pause and go away and do it. And if you haven't already seen Children of Men, I don't even know why you're listening to Cinema in Context. But that is definitely a hole in your cinephilia that needs filling. So
I just want to say, if you haven't seen Children of Men, you should watch it on a fantastic cinema experience kind of screen
Good
and
sound system,
Yes.
yeah.
And you should turn your phones off and plan to watch it in one sitting because
And it's not long.
it's like an hour and 40.
40,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Extraordinary.
with Alfonso Cuarón's films, he often has a lot of long takes, has shots where you just go, how did you do this?
Yep.
And he's very aware of where the rhythm of a film kind of ebbs and flows. And
Yep.
so if you're pausing it to go and
Oh.
get your Uber Eats,
Yeah, don't stop.
no, eat first.
Yeah.
And then get into one of what I think is the greatest films of all time.
Yeah, I would agree.
So on that, let's talk about the creator first, because
Possibly.
otherwise, the rhythm of this podcast.
We had the flow. Now let's end.
Yes.
I will start us off by saying this: watching the creator, I was really, really into this movie, you guys. Like, I don't know, 40 minutes in, an hour 15 in. I think somewhere in the back of my mind, I recognized its faults. So the movie does struggle because, as you referenced before, Jeremy, it draws on our knowledge of other sci-fi films, kind of to fill in its visual vocabulary and also some of the plot elements. So it is, and I've made a list, pretty much Terminator, Blade Runner 2049, Akira, lots of Ex Machina, a little bit of Her, a lot of Lone Wolf and Cub, a lot of Star Wars, which makes sense because, Gareth Edwards did Rogue One, The Mandalorian, a lot of Avatar, a lot of the Blizzard game Overwatch, all the stuff, of course, Children of Men, and District 9, a lot of that
I
stuff.
thought District 9. And Elysium, would you
Elysium,
say?
yes.
Elysium, yeah.
Similar problems and really good stuff as Elysium. That's a great comparison.
Yeah.
Total Recall was another.
Total
good one.
Recall,
Both
nice.
versions.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's all the Vietnam fodder. So,
Oh, yeah.
Deer Hunters in there. And
Yeah, Apocalypse Now, a lot of Apocalypse Now.
Yeah. I could even say the new Planet of the Apes films is kind of in there as well.
That being said, I think this, visually, this movie is extraordinary.
Visually, I think it's fabulous.
My goodness. And did you guys read about the behind the scenes about how they actually made this movie?
No.
It is insane. So this movie looks like it cost, I don't know, $500 million. It literally does. And yet, it cost $80 million.
Wow.
Which is a fraction of what your average Marvel/Star Wars cost these days. What Ant-Man 3 was, I think, purported to be $300 million. And how they did it, and it brings us back to Gareth Edwards and what he does best. I mean, Sarah, you and I rave about Monsters all the time. His first movie, which is, I think, probably one of his best movies. Rogue One is great, but I think a lot of that is Tony Gilroy. He is, in his heart of hearts, a guerrilla filmmaker, right? Even now...
Especially
I thought-
with King Kong.
Oh,
No, Godzilla.
Godzilla, nice.
Sorry, yeah, okay.
Nice.
Yeah, it wasn't quite the connection
I was
looking
thinking
for.
that too. Okay.
Oh my god.
So Guer.
Yes.
Okay.
And so, like Monsters, with a shoestring budget, you end up with extraordinary images.
Yeah.
In Monsters, he did all the special effects himself on his laptop. And I think even with a budget, it really comes across. So what they did was they had basically store-bought Sony digital cameras.
This is for the creator.
For the creator.
Yeah.
Him and a skeleton crew of basically so himself, his cameraman, cinematographer, sound guy, and actors, which is a group of about 4 to 5 people, flew around the world, going to Nepal, Thailand, Cambodia,
all
and just
over Asia.
filmed on location with real lighting.
Yeah.
And that was it. And they had, I think, over 80 locations at a fraction of the cost of what it would take to actually, scout it out, build the sets and all that.
Did they film with the actors? Or did
They filmed with the actors.
So they took the actors with them?
Yeah,
and-
he said on the interview, it's much cheaper to buy plane tickets than it is to actually construct sets or to do everything on digitally.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then afterwards, they did a final cut of the movie before overlaying the special effects.
Yeah.
So unlike what Marvel does with its house style, which is, figure out a previs everything and then film it all, render it all. Oh, this doesn't work. Let's fix some stuff. And very, very famously this year with Across the Spider-Verse, right? There were... the creators were in a lot of hot water for what they did and how it created so much stress among the filmmakers. And there very much is not that level of stress because you have the film. All you have to do is make the special effects for the film that is
So
already
there's nothing
complete.
wasted. So
Nothing
it's not
wasted.
like you've created a whole thing and then cut it, edited it, and then left a lot of...
Which is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And it's all done with tech that is readily available.
Because it's problem solving, and it's what filmmaking kind of the best filmmaking is, right? Which is that you come together, a group of people, talented, care about a project and get in. It reminds me of Everything Everywhere All at Once, and they made that on a tiny budget with 5 people as well doing the special effects, and how well that comes off. I think about Lord of the Rings, the first 3 films, and whilst we might see them as these multi-million-dollar films, when you go back and look at the budget of the first 3 Lord of the Rings films, it's not big. I think they made 3 movies for $200 million, which is incredible. And his team, they were so good. Again, I wouldn't say guerrilla filmmaking because they had a whole kind of studio space that they built in Miramar, but they did things with the best tools in front of them, you know, and they kind of created things physically. And so I'm not surprised. And I think about the Marvel model and what you've just described, William. What a wasteful, soulless way to make movies that is now catching up with them. Those movies are losing money. And it's a shame the Marvels is losing money because I actually think the premise looks quite interesting. But I'm so sick of seeing another Flash, as much as I quite enjoyed The Flash. But the way that film, like the CGI, and I know that's DC, but, you know, just like, let's stop throwing money at CGI artists that are overworked and creating average work.
Clearly, from what we've just learned from you, William, this is an exemplar in using natural locations and natural lighting because, as you say, the look of in the trailer was what actually got me hugely excited. I had been longing for the creator to come out and therefore was disappointed when the reviews were going a bit meh because it looked like it was going to be. Also, they picked an awesome song for the trailer, which is always gets you, doesn't it? But it looked like it was going to be amazing, and it looked amazing. And it looked real, and in the same way that Children of Men looks and feels, even if it's all done on at Pinewood or something, it looks and feels gritty and real. So that's absolutely a strength of the creator.
When I saw the creator trailer, the thing that disappointed me is Mr. Washington. What's his first name? Joseph.
John David.
John David.
Yeah, because he's just...
He's so nothing.
He's really nothing. Like in Tenet, obviously. Was he in another film?
Yes.
He's in the KK Clans. Oh, Black Klansman.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And he was in a terrible Netflix film last year, or earlier this, I don't even remember, where it's sort of a love affair thing, and it's sort of dystopian, and he's awful in it, and I really should have Googled it before I said it.
Yeah, he's not interesting, is he?
No,
he's really
and I don't mean to be unkind.
No, neither.
But he is a chemistry-free zone. He has 2 looks. No, seriously, he does. He has 2 looks. And one of them is his blank face, and the other is when he turns his head slightly to the right and he does a really strong side eye. And that's literally all he has, is doing a side eye at someone.
Can I just say, the little girl acted the pants off him.
Oh my!
She's adorable.
She is what makes this movie work.
Yeah. She's gorgeous.
Oh, and him trying to be all like in love with
Gemma Chan.
Maya.
Yes.
I mean, Jenna. I don't have a lot of time for Gemma Chan, but she was all right.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
no, I don't know what's going on.
And
it's
then
not
I also saw the
okay.
trailer and I thought, oh, is there anything new in this movie? And when I watched the film, it's like, no, it's not. Like, we've had pretty much all of the ideas in this film I've seen in 100 movies.
Amsterdam.
Oh, yeah, that was a terrible movie.
And then, no, but Beckett is the really, really ordinary, I say Netflix movie. I watched it on a telly is all I know. But, such a drag. And and in that, he's meant to be in love with Alicia Vikander. Oh, my gosh. There's nothing. It's,
She's another robot, isn't she? She's
an
ex-machina.
ex-machina.
Yeah, well, there you
Yeah.
go. So there's your intersecting
connection.
set. But anyway,
I just... Look, I forced myself to enjoy it, and I kind of came out of the movie being like, "Oh, that was fine." You know, I do think it sort of manages to hit the beats it's trying to hit. It's just that it's relatively boring.
Yeah.
We've seen all the movies you listed are much better versions of what this movie's trying to do.
Yeah.
And are much more ambitious, strangely, like plot-wise and direction-wise.
Yeah.
Even Avatar, which is like trope central, but it's so much more satisfying in both Avatar movies compared to this one.
Well, Avatar has such a clear sense of character and emotional stakes.
And there's no character in this. It's all very well to say, he's ex-special forces. He had a pregnant wife. I spent most of it thinking, is Gemma Chan actually AI? And then going, no, can't be, because how would AI have a baby? Blah, blah. Who cares?
It was the same way I felt about Tenet, but Tenet, there was no character on page either. So
No, but
Although
Tenet-
that was intentional, right?
But
Whereas
Tenet was-
this doesn't feel
you say that
intentional.
like that makes it better.
Well, because like his bloody name is the protagonist.
I know.
Yeah,
Like,
and
Wow,
Tenet was
wow.
actually I mean, was it wasn't a great. Well, I mean, whatever. I don't know. I would like to see it again, but at least it was clever and it got you thinking. Whereas there isn't anything about the creator. To me, the thing that actually is potentially clever is the conflict between actually these AI, like the AI Buddhist monks and all that sort of thing. I was quite fascinated by the world building.
Right.
And I thought it doesn't just look great aesthetically, but the world building is fabulous. This notion that even AI humans take it upon themselves to don orange robes and to go and become a monk in a monastery in the wherever, the Himalayas or wherever it was meant to be, North Asia, whatever. What was it called? Not East Asia,
New
Asia.
February
But-
1984.
But none of that was investigated.
No.
And to me, it was just like clanging disappointment after disappointment. And you know that I don't really have high standards in this regard. But at the minute that he walks in the door and there's like a dais with an armchair on it, and you expect it, and a television, you expect it either to swivel when the television is playing The Ring or Poltergeist, or that the child is stroking a white cat. It's good to see you, Mr. Washington.
Or
it's,
she explains what the Matrix is.
Yeah.
exactly. It's
know?
like, why does it have to look like everything else and do nothing?
Speaking of The Matrix, do you guys remember the Animatrix?
Yes.
And the two prequel shorts, the what's it called, the New Renaissance, or what's that called?
I remember all of them.
And like those films are way better versions of the creator.
Yeah.
No, that's a Kiwi film or something. I'd seen
No,
Animatrix.
The Animatrix is the
It's the
the
highest-
mid 2000s DVD spin-off short
Yeah.
film collection of The Matrix.
It came out before the two sequels, and
Right.
it got everybody really hyped and excited. And
Yeah.
then before our
Some of those
dreams
films
will
are
crush.
Yeah.
real good. But yeah, speaking of world building, completely agreed, Sarah. There are it's a huge pity because there are so many cool things in this movie.
Yes.
What the kid is Alfie, what she's watching on TV is like a propaganda cartoon about like New Asia launching an attack on the big Nomad space station. I was like, that is so cool. Of course they would make stuff like this to show children. A lot of the stuff about robot culture, how the movie opens with like alternate reality or alternate future newsreels about why robots are part of our society. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
And there's the political side of things, which the film was sort of hinting at, especially between the United States and New Asia.
Oh,
that
yeah.
I just feel like that was another missed opportunity for where they could have really figured some stuff out.
Well, here's the thing. Like, the whole anti-American angle, I thought was really quite good.
Yeah.
I felt for the robots. Like, I
Yeah.
fell for hook, line, and sinker. It's like, man, these Americans are pretty evil, but also evil in a very believable kind of way. Like, Alison Janney is a great character.
She's a
Yeah.
great character, but man, I was annoyed that she was just leaving technology around. Like, that technology
Yeah.
where she used to kind of scan the guy's brain.
so cool.
And I'm like,
So
why did
cool.
you just leave that on the side of the road? Surely that's a very expensive piece of equipment.
And yeah, she performed all right, but she did feel like another tropey kind of character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another tropey kind of,
from
except
Avatar.
they let her cry. They let her cry on the plane. Did you notice? Because she's a woman. She didn't speak like that. I don't know why I'm doing it. But you know how traditionally they're just the tough guy and you're dropping into enemy territory. And you know,
Edie
they...
Falco and Avatar
And that-
too.
Yeah, that's right,
But
that's
they
right.
tried to go, well, you know, I lost both my sons, and then she has a little tear, and we go, wow, this is really progressive, because not only is she a woman and she's high up in the military, but she's allowed to cry, and everyone's like, yeah, that's natural. But still, no. There was, and look, you know, I don't have high standards when it comes to like plot contrivances and like continuity errors, but
Then,
there
Sarah,
seemed to be...
you would not have enjoyed the final 20 minutes of The Creator.
No, because there were so many things where I was going, but why would you say that? But why would you do that? But who would let that happen? And no. And I haven't got any of them written down, I'm sorry, because I was just like, what?
So here's the thing, right? Like, I said so before, I was really into the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Like, just with everything that was going on, it was well shot. The action was okay, but it was pretty, and sometimes that's good enough, right? And the relationship between Josh and Alfie, I mean, again, as you guys have said, Alfie is a much more interesting and nuanced character than Josh, but you kind of buy the whole, father, surrogate, daughter thing. And then you reach the final act, and it's like the plot goes into overdrive, and they're on a rocket. And they're going up to the space station, and he's planting explosives, and the US is launching missiles at everyone.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, no, slow down. And then suddenly they have remote control of this Matrix-looking spider octopus robot, and he has to sacrifice himself. It's like, whoa, this is a lot. And the contrivances it takes to reach the ending is absolutely bonkers. And I ended up like,
I think the movie,
jeez, this is terrible.
The movie lost me when Alfie was dragging her mother through the field.
Yes!
I was like, what?
How does she get all that strong?
I was just like, what?
Well, why are there replica Gemma Chans on the space station?
Yeah, that wasn't clear either.
But that's a weapons platform.
Because she sold her likeness. She sold her likeness.
But even why would there be a whole lot of robots?
And they hate robots. It's America.
And I don't understand it. And
why is there a beautiful, like, gladiator-style wheat field?
Yes! That they can run to
final
each
shot.
other.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't care.
Going back to the positives, Nomad. Again, I keep saying that. So much of this movie is just cool, right?
Is that with the big blue light?
Yes,
that
that's
how
what
it
rad.
opens.
And that opening, you're right, when it's
They come out of the
rushing
water.
So
through
creepy.
the fields, and I thought this is going to be incredible. It's everything I want it to be.
The perfect metaphor for, like, United States imperialism and overreach. And you cannot run from it.
Yeah.
People try and get obliterated.
It reminded me of Minority Report, which I
yeah.
also really rate in terms of there being an overarching thingy that will find you and that you cannot hide, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Because that was so thorough. Nomad's Beam was beautiful the way that it... sort of, I don't even know what the word is, undulated over the landscape. I loved that.
And I think what Gareth Edwards does best in every single one of his movies, Rogue One, Godzilla, Monsters, this, is just the sense of overwhelming scale.
Yes.
Right?
I agree.
It's unnatural. You've never seen anything man-made so big, and yet somehow it makes sense, and it's momentous, and it's terrifying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And there was some beautiful shots. Like, I thought the shot, it really reminded me of Rogue One. Were they in Vietnam, were they? Or
on a beach. Like, so similar Vietnam vibes.
Vietnam or
It's like
Thailand,
Bahamas.
somewhere Southeast Asia, wasn't it?
Oh, you mean in the Creator?
Yeah, in the
Oh,
Korea.
no, that's
yeah,
like
yeah.
a Thailand beat.
Yeah,
That
very
looks-
much Thai.
classic,
Yeah, but then it reminded me of the Rogue One.
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of-
yeah.
The beautiful, that was South Pacific, I think, was the area.
I think it was Caribbean or...
Right.
Okay, anyway.
Yeah. So just the way he filmed those scenes was amazing. And I just, there were some really cool things about, everything you're saying I agree with, but my gosh, it was some...
I think in terms of the world building, the good and the bad, the bad part I felt was the robots.
The robots?
The robots.
The robots?
I don't know if you guys felt the same way, but it's like, why are they robots? They're just like people. Like, Soylent Green is people.
Oh, wait, you mean like the monks and the nice people?
Like there's...
Yeah.
There's all this talk about AI this and AI that. And of
Yeah.
course, nowadays, in our real world, AI and the rise of AI is a pretty big issue.
Yeah.
But
You'd think you'd just use them for function, right?
there's no point in the movie where you kind of feel like the robots are robots. They're just people. Like, they're people with like little whirly things in their head.
No, but some of
what
them...
differentiates
No,
them from
because
people?
some of them do have, some of them don't have faces and whatnot, but they feel more like the ones that are going to clean your car and
Right, like the
and go to
cops
war
and
and things
whatnot,
like that.
yeah.
And that seemed to me, that made sense. There was a moment there where I was like, well, actually, wouldn't it be useful if the military or police or whatever were robots?
Right.
Because that way there's no loss of human life and you can just send them in and blah, blah, blah. And they don't need to have faces, etc.
I think this is part of the issue of the movie, is that, like, I think about when you watch old 1970s movies and they go, oh, computers will do that. And you're like, well, computers don't kind of work like that. And it's the same thing now with, like, you can't make a movie about robots in this way when AI is kind of every day now. It's really mundane. Everybody's able to go into ChatGPT. Sure, there might be concerns, but it's really about whether a kid's going to cheat in an exam or You know, that's where our concerns are at. The kind of
Or whether a
Skynet.
script is going to be written by one.
Yeah. It's
Which
like
is already happening.
It's like with the pandemic, like who knew the end of the world would involve so much baking? It's kind of the joke that was made. And it's like, you can't make those stories in the same way anymore. It's like if you go back and watch pre 9/11 movies with quote unquote terrorists, it's really clunky and silly because actually in a post 9/11 world, what does that mean for us? What is, how has this, our society contributed to this problem? I just don't know, like, and I guess to bring it back to my media class, my students, they are going to have an exam coming up at the end of the year where they have to talk about dystopian science fiction film as a genre, and they could very comfortably talk about the creator as being a bit of an inert entry into the series, and that actually we don't want to watch dystopian science fiction film in this way at the moment because we've kind of lived through a version of the apocalypse, and AI is such a non-threat in terms of what's depicted in this film.
I think even how it's depicted is just, it's not what we see as AI, right? Again, I go back to my point, like the robots in the Tibetan gear at the end. It's just people. If you replaced all the Sims with like people without special effects, the story would not change a tick.
That's a good point.
Right. Apart from maybe Alfie being able to, create and to control technology. But it's like, what differentiates AI from non-AI? What differentiates a Sim from a robot without a face from the bomb robot? Super cool. Love that guy.
I guess that's the thing that I was saying, that there's sort of this suggestion that there's this sort of I don't know if it's a racial tension or if it's like a nation tension, like a political tension between the United States and New Asia, and it's like, but it's not really. I think it's maybe the same thing. It's like I'm not really clear what the issue is here, apart from a bomb.
Yeah.
Which they then say right at the end, spoiler, right? Is like,
It's
hang on a
human
second,
error.
it turns out that was us, that was by mistake. Oh no.
Oh,
Yeah.
I missed that.
So they try and backtrack so that actually it wasn't the AI who had done the bomb in the first place.
I think that's an interesting idea. The idea in the movie is that it was a coding error from people in the military.
Right.
And so even though AI did it, it wasn't the AI's fault. And it's like, okay, at least that's saying something. But so much of the movie, the notion of AI just goes uncontested. It's like, oh yeah, they're just completely sentient beings. Like, it's about AI, but it doesn't care to explain anything about our relationship with AI.
Yeah.
And I find that really disappointing.
And like, why does the little girl, like, there are times, Alfie, there are times when she just carries on with quite a blank face, like you would expect an ex machina or whatever to do. And then there's times where she's like, we just want to be free, and she cries and stuff. And maybe I missed things in my sort of the dull ache of disappointment from watching the film, but like, that didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
So
Well, let's pivot, because I think one of the many things I love about Children of Men is that everything makes sense, and the things that are ambiguous are comfortably ambiguous, and there is so much world building that happens in that, and there's lots of little details that are wonderful, but there's also so much that is positioned and placed that is Chekhov's gun, right? There's multiple Chekhov's guns that all get fired at the end, both metaphorically and literally. And so you've got the establishment of the refugee tensions in is it London? It's London, isn't it?
it's London. And can I just say, it's 2027.
Right.
Yeah.
So that fascinating thing that always crops up with sci-fi is like, what year do they put it in? 2049 or 2020?
Gosh.
It's actually, it feels horribly. Here we are in 2023. Within 4 years, it's not beyond the bounds of possibility.
No.
Whereas,
It's really not.
the creator is 2065, which is sufficiently in the future. Obviously, this film was only made recently, and Children of Men was made 21 years before the year in which it's set.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, it feels like they're still wearing normal clothes. They're walking. They're getting coffee and stuff. Bombs are going off. The everything is grey and horrible and da-di-da. And filthy. Anyway, sorry. Yep, you're saying yep.
No, I just really, the film doesn't, like, we're talking about the creator kind of leaving lots of opportunities on the floor. And moving on.
Yeah.
Children of Men has a very clear intention, and it's one of the things I always enjoy about Alfonso Cuarón. And I think for some people it could be a criticism of his work, but I always think he does it so well. He has such a clarity of vision, whether it's Mama Tambien and kind of that investigation of the political state of where are they? Are they in Brazil?
They're in Mexico.
Mexico.
Yeah.
But it's told through this relationships between these three people, or with Gravity. You know, I just watched Gravity with some of my students, a different group of students, and that's a movie about a woman dealing with grief, told in the biggest kind of setting you could think of. And it's the same with this film as well. There's such a clear drive, both in terms of Theo's character. Like he has such a clear narrative arc. He's a broken man who's lost his child. He's lost purpose, and he finds it with looking after Key. But also this idea that London sees this, well, the world sees this crisis of we've got no future. Our women or people that can't, people are no longer having children.
We're going to be, when he walks through the school towards the end, and you think, oh, I see, yeah, of course. All the schools will have been abandoned because the youngest person is 18.
Yeah.
There are no schools anymore.
Yeah.
Although I did think about being a lifelong learner, and I thought they could have continued to use this for the adults.
Yeah.
But then I put that to one side. But anyway, yep.
And just this idea that, oh my gosh, we've got no hope, but actually you just need to kind of shift your perspective and think about, what does nationhood mean? Who are we as a people? Are we London or are we the human race? Like, there's just all of that woven so nicely into that story, and yet they don't talk about it.
Yeah.
No.
It's just part of Theo and Key and the other characters around them that all pretty much die, getting to safety.
Yeah. Well,
brilliant.
getting Key to safety. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing. There's so much selflessness that happens, actually, because...
from him and
from
I
everyone.
meant from everybody.
Yeah.
Well, there's the political motivations of the other characters. You've got the midwife, she's a big character, and you've
Yes.
got the woman that they meet in the...
But Pam Ferris, the midwife, who interestingly is in Call the Midwife, and she was in Darling Buds of May.
She's Trunchbull from Matilda.
There we
and
go.
she's the auntie that blows up in Harry Potter 3.
Oh, that's
Right.
right. Yeah.
So she sacrifices herself, remember, in the bus, because she stands up and goes, "Oh, forgive me,"
Absolutely.
and then she gets dragged off and killed. But the interesting thing is, as you say, Jeremy,
I suppose
about-
Michael Caine as well. He's very selfless.
Absolutely.
Julianne Moore, Michael Caine, the midwife, and the woman with the dog. And actually, there's a few of them. I take that back. There is a few of them.
There are loads who
Yeah,
are
you're
like,
right,
look,
you're
your
right.
cause is more important, off you go. And including, actually, Theo. Now, you could diminish Theo's selflessness and say, look, he literally has nothing to live for. Because he doesn't.
Yeah.
The minute, isn't it brave how they killed Julianne Moore so early in the film?
One of the best
Freaking
shots
amazing.
in history.
And that whole, it's not a dolly or a tracking shot, but that whole one-er is extraordinary.
And do you know how they filmed
Yes,
that?
yes.
And how their seats were moving down to
and
make
the
room
camera's
for the camera?
on the roof.
Yeah,
and
everyone's on
going
the
out.
roof.
Yeah, amazing.
And there is a cut though, because they had to move out of the car. There is a little sneaky cut.
Oh,
Yeah,
no, but
with
it's
the pillow of the car,
extraordinary.
yeah.
But it's extraordinary, and you should, YouTube it, along with the whole
No,
Raid...
don't YouTube it. Watch the flipping film.
No, watch the film,
On a
but then
great sound-
YouTube
with a
it,
great
and then
sound system.
Raid 2, the whole, how they do
the
scene.
cameraman is
in
the car scene.
Amazing. So all those things are incredible. But there are incredible long shots with ongoing acting from dear old Clive Owen, who's just this kind of like depressed, cynical, fabulous character throughout.
Yeah.
But he has nothing. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Oh, it's sad that he dies at the end, but it also isn't because it's not about him. He's irrelevant.
Also, he might not,
He's dead.
He's dead, but he's done his
She
job.
goes, Theo, and he doesn't answer.
And he's done his job by then. You know, all he had to do was get her to the human project, which
Yeah.
he's done for all intents and purposes. And so we don't need to see him get there and then be bandaged up and, and then recover. I mean, what is he going to do? Nothing. So...
But that's the whole point, isn't it?
One of my favorite character moments of his, and here's the thing. The last time I saw Children of Men in its entirety was in 2006 at the movies.
Whoa!
I saw the movie. I remember I'd read a spread on it in the New Zealand Herald.
Wow.
And they raved about it. It's like, oh man, let's go watch this movie. This sounds great.
One day I'll need to do a podcast on it. Yeah.
It was at the Rialto, and I remember being literally on the edge of my seat through the whole thing. And then after the movie ended, just the... And for the longest time, in my head, I've been saying, this is one of my favorite movies of all time.
So you hadn't seen it again until
I've seen
just
it in
this week?
bits and drabs,
Yeah.
right? I've seen obviously the car chase on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I've seen...
Look at me.
So sorry.
Are you looking at me because I say YouTube and
No.
not TikTok?
It's actually on YouTube. It's actually on. It's the,
I know.
and it's the DVD extra
I
that someone
know.
uploaded on YouTube. That's amazing.
I love it.
And on HBO and stuff, you watch it, and it's like, oh, this is that scene from Children of Men.
That's right.
But last night was the first time since 2006 I've seen the entire thing in its entirety.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you said it before, Jeremy, but, guys, I want to pose a question. Is this one of the greatest films ever made? I think it may be.
Yeah.
At least in terms of modern classics,
Yeah.
like post-1970s.
Absolutely.
Why is this film so successful on all fronts? Like,
Yeah.
every single decision. The music is extraordinary. The sound mix, do you remember when you talked about, like, watching it on the best sound system? Like, the ambience, the animals. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, animals being a big motif through the movie, but there's a lot of just gunfire mixed with sheep bleats and dog barks and cats.
And the lighting, the cinematography is beyond. I mean, you watch the movie, right? And you watch the amazing car scene, and you watch all these amazing bits, and it's very kind of like guerrilla in the sense of like shaky cam and sort of. And then you get to the labor sequence, and it's still. My students were like, "Whoa!"
It's one take.
And
how did they do that?
Well, it's a
Yeah.
mixture of CGI but
Yeah.
but it's because it comes back to the same thing with The Creator or with Everything Everywhere All at Once or Lord of the Rings or whatever. These are filmmakers that are trying to find the best tool for the job, and so they know when to use CGI and when not to use CGI. And so there's a lot of CGI in Children of Men that you don't even notice, whether it's the windscreen in that car sequence or the blood splurts on the camera.
But it's a mechanism, isn't it? It's a mechanism for the audience to feel the breathlessness of one take, so that it's the classic. And this is why we teach it. Is that classic? You are the audience becomes one with everybody in the film because we are immersed in it, because we cannot breathe, because you can't breathe unless the frame cuts.
Yeah.
And it's relentless and terrifying.
And one of my favorite moments of Alfonso Cuarón talking about this is about gravity. And he talks about the opening sequence of that film where, it's a normal day in space until the debris sort of changes that. Yeah. And eventually Dr. Stone, the Sandra Bullock character, gets flung into space and she spins off into the distance.
Then the camera cuts.
And then it cuts. And he said when they were making that, part of his team were like, oh, we can carry the shot on by doing this and this. And he said, no, that's when the scene's over.
Yeah.
We cut because we don't just keep going because we want to, which I think is my big issue with 1917. There are lots of moments in that film where the moment's over. Why is this still going? And I do have that moment
because
in the
it's
middle.
trying to be bravura. It's trying to be Birdman.
And it actually takes you out of the thing. Whereas Birdman, they know it's a conceit because it changes time frames.
Sure.
And, there is this knowing that this is a conceit that we're playing with it.
Yeah.
Whereas I just didn't feel that sense of awareness in 1917. Absolutely felt it in Gravity.
Really good point, and very, very good point about editing and the importance of editing, and that it isn't just about, oh, look, we can make this feel like it's all one shot, but that it's a little bit like being a DJ in a club where you're playing the sort of interminable music that doesn't have words and you can't sing along to, which is the sort of club to which I do not go. However, it's knowing how to rise and fall. You are conducting the dancers, right? And it's giving them those peaks and troughs, or however you want to put it, isn't it? So that's a really interesting point. And I remember that moment in Gravity, and I remember the breath of the audience. I saw it in the IMAX. It was one of those media screenings, and I remember the collective kind of, not a gasp necessarily, just a breath. Can I just say, you mentioned the music, and I just wanted to say that John Tavener is the British composer who is known for religious works, and that's the music in Children of Men, which is it's almost a mix of Lisa Gerrard's kind of ambient moans in Gladiator and those kind of. It's that wonderful, almost mystical, almost religious but not religious, because it's almost an a-religious world, isn't it? It's,
until it's not, right?
Yes, that's right.
Until you start having the Christian symbolism and the nativity scene.
But not just that, you've also got the kind of, what's the religion that the midwife she's got a version of.
Oh yes, shanty.
Yeah,
yes,
quite
that's
very
right.
religious.
That's right.
And she does Tai Chi, and
Yes.
it's very Eastern.
She can't get it right.
yeah.
And Key, and he says to Key, who's the father, and she says, "I was a virgin," which is obviously a very nice they did that, so it didn't become a religious allegory.
Yeah.
But that she's like, "Oh, I don't know, there were so many of them," But technically, there is no dad there, and she is bringing the child who is the savior of the world.
So, have either of you read the book?
No.
Petty
Is it
James?
called Children of Men?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. I have not, but apparently reading up on it, like it's much more ostensibly religious, right?
Right.
It's about kind of a Christian sort of faith, becoming brought up in a really big way, and that's the metaphor of the child being born in a childless world.
Right.
And there were some people that said that the film kind of washed a lot of that stuff away. Which, give or take, I think the imagery is definitely there.
It is.
There's the talk about the Pietà.
Yes.
And then, of course, later on, you see the woman cradling her dead child.
And the fact that when she's walking through the war-torn building and all the soldiers and everybody, they part the waves. I don't mean
Yes.
like the Red Sea, but they part and they touch the baby's feet.
And
it's
they
Jesus,
form
Jesus,
yes.
Jesus. And some of them do cross themselves because they will have existed in a world that still had Christian beliefs. But absolutely, this sense of stop fighting, this is important, and absolutely.
We even talked about Chiwetel Ejiofor, who's
Yeah.
brilliant in this.
Yes.
This is one of the first roles I remember seeing him in.
Same.
He'd done stuff before.
This in
but
Love, actually.
yeah, I was also with Kinky Boots. He was the lead in Kinky Boots.
Oh, yeah.
But he's really good in this.
Yeah.
And he's really good in this in the sense that his character is kind of the villain of the piece. But
And yet he's
really
so
not,
straight.
He's also not the villain. Like
That's right.
There's a bigger villain at play.
That's
Yeah.
absolutely right.
But
He's
he's
so
good.
human in it, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And so actually his I'm so sorry, I'm trampling on what you're saying,
No,
but I'm
go.
excited by it because you're absolutely right. In clumsier hands, he would have been some sort of evil, kind
or just
of.
like if
I'm
say,
a-
Washington was playing him, for instance. it would
But
be-
then he just would have given him the side eye, and you would have known he was a baddie. But no, you're right though.
I'm
Because
sorry, Denzel. We like him. We like him.
yeah.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. Chiwetel Ejiofor starts off being a good guy, and then when he is sort of unveiled as a bad guy, his character is exactly the same.
Well, he still sees himself as a good guy,
Exactly.
right?
That's what I was
Yeah.
going to say. There's an
Yeah.
ambiguity about it.
Yeah.
He's compromised, but not really. He's just like,
on a
but this is
mission.
how it has to be, I'm afraid.
Oh my gosh, that sequence where they're trying to get the car started.
The slow
Yes.
car chase.
Oh, my students again were like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
good.
And how they shoot that sequence where you in the background, it's all out of focus.
Yeah.
But you just see people sprinting
Yeah.
towards the car.
Charlie
Like,
Hunnam,
oh.
interestingly.
I was
Yeah.
shocked. I completely
With the-
forgot
with the
that
blonde
that was him.
dreadlocks, yeah.
And even he has an arc, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you killed my cousin. He was only 19. It's like, of course, and he has rage issues, but of course, he's
Yeah.
only 19.
Yeah.
Oh no, I was gonna say he doesn't die to the cinder block to the face, which is a horrific moment.
Oh, Sid.
Oh, are you talking about Peter Mullen, the Scottish
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
Sid?
Sid.
The thing that's interesting to me there is I didn't know until this viewing that was Peter Mullen, who is notoriously a scary guy to act with, a scary guy. Robin Malcolm, when Peter Mullen came here to do Top of the Lake, and he was superb
right,
in
yeah.
that. And Robin Malcolm had a
yeah,
real life relationship with him for a while, and I just felt scared for her in real life because he's such a fearsome fellow. But anyway, he was fearsome as Sid because you couldn't tell right from the beginning, when it's set up with who are you, da 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 da, and then he's like, I'm joking, and then you're like, well, no, you've got to be really careful of this Joker. Frightening.
There's so many good moments as well where it plays with the audience's expectations about what's going to happen. Like when and I've forgotten her name, the Russian woman or
Yes.
Yugoslavian,
Yes.
Romani, I think she is.
Romanian. Okay, Romanian. So she takes the baby through the doorway.
Yeah.
And Key goes, my baby, and
then she squishes herself through
she
the
gets
door.
through, but she's
Yeah.
still there. She's just
Yeah.
waiting for them.
Absolutely. You think, oh my goodness, that's it. You're never going to see that child again. She's going to sell her or whatever. Yeah,
And then
brilliant.
she stays and her dog, and she's
Yeah.
actually there to help them, and it's quite there's some lovely moments because then of course there are other moments where we've already had it set up with the freedom fighters and how they've really turned on them and they're going to kill Theo. And,
Yeah.
and It's very intentional. I keep coming back to that point.
It's a very brutal film, and I have to admit, Jeremy, I knew that you taught it, and on this rewatch, rewatch, unlike William, I did think, is this appropriate for Jeremy to be teaching this to young people? There's a lot in it that's very, I don't mean intellectually challenging. I know your kids can deal with that. I just mean it's really grim.
I think
They loved it.
especially in the light of the last 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, people have talked about this film being prescient, and my goodness, with what's happening in Ukraine, in the Middle East. I mean, the imagery, a lot of it's taken from, the mid-2000s, especially during the first George W. Bush era. And it totally plays true today, and that's horrifying.
Well, it's worse now with the refugee situation
Yes.
in England
And
places.
Brexit.
That's right. And the fact that it's so brilliant, isn't it? The fact that Clive Owen gets off the bus on his way to work, to his dreary job in dreary grey London, and he walks past these big cages full of refugees, and doesn't blink because you don't even notice
every day.
because it's just there all the time. And the dogs and you get off the train or whatever it was, and you've got people shouting at you and you just get on with it and you're just used to that.
My mind has gone straight to the opening of the film, which is him going in, getting the coffee. You get the Diego
Brilliant.
news
Yeah.
thing. Everybody's watching it. It's the Princess Diana death moment. He goes out, he mixes his milk. It blows up.
Behind him.
A man walks out holding his arm. Cut to black or cut to title.
Yeah.
Like just the confidence of that opening. It is grim, but it sets the tone.
It gives you the exposition. You know what the stakes are. You see the main character.
You see what his life is like.
Absolutely.
Every day.
And
he's
the
It's
getting
like
a
2
coffee.
minutes.
And the
Wow.
fact that
Yeah.
he almost doesn't blink an eye, but then when he goes to the office and then he says, "Oh look, I think that the loss of baby Diego's affected me."
Yeah.
But then later on, he doesn't talk about Diego at all. He just says, "My ears are ringing." So you know that he has been affected by it. May I just say, the production is really interesting to me because some of us, i.e. me, were living in London in the year prior, 2005, when the bombs went off in the tube on the 7th of July. And they went off on the tube and on a bus. And so this film came out in England the following September. Sorry, the year following, in the September. And the bombing, for example, of the coffee shop will have felt horribly recent and very... not on the nose, because I'm not suggesting it was inappropriate or that it was too soon necessarily. Oh, it's a P.D. James book, by the way. So, so I think that's interesting because I wonder whether, and I'm just quickly flicking in here to see whether in actual fact it was filmed earlier and then they were like, oh, we need to delay it or whatever, blah, 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 blah. So I'll come back to you on that. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because there will have been a time when it was like, that's maybe too soon, so we're going to delay the release of that a little while or something like that.
It's also such an icon. I mean, it's Fleet Street. It's such an iconic view. You see the cathedral in the background, and I mean, they play with that iconography quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I completely get that. With the timing, would they have filmed after the bombings?
Well, that's what I'm just trying to look up here.
But I mean, okay, while you're doing that,
Yes.
the other thing I think the film does so well is just the sense of absolute reality of space and of place, right? When Theo goes to visit his cousin, and it's the Battersea Power Station.
Yes,
And you have the Pink Floyd reference in the background.
It's amazing. What a wonderful
But
reference.
can I just say, it's absurd, because if you know London, he's driving along towards Buckingham Palace down the Mall, and then all of a sudden he's heading into Battersea Power Station, which is nowhere near. And then
happens
all
in
of
movies
a
all
sudden,
the time.
Yeah, I know. And then all of a sudden he's in the countryside then all of a sudden he's at the Tate Modern.
And then Battersea again.
That's right. And so it's like,
when they went into the Tate Modern, I was like, the Leo pointing me was, that's the Tate Modern.
Yeah.
That's funny. I can't help but bring up a TV show which it's not quite my Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but it's close enough, which is The Leftovers.
Oh gosh.
And
yes.
I've been thinking about that as we've been talking about the prescience of that TV series with COVID. But in season 3, there's the end of season 3 set in Melbourne, and there's an episode in Melbourne City, and I was just in Melbourne City, and there's a chase sequence which involves the library and the graffiti kind of alleyways. And now visiting Melbourne, I'm like, there's no way this chase sequence happened. Like, you don't walk out of the library and you're in the alleyways. Like, that's quite the distance. And, but, it happens all the time.
Can I just tell you, it says in Wikipedia The creation of the single shot sequences was incredibly time consuming, etc. It took 14 days to prepare for the single shot in which Clive Owen's character searches a building under attack. So they planned the shot for 14 days.
That's a big sequence.
And then 5 hours for every time they wanted to reshoot it. Now, in the middle of one shot, blood splattered onto the lens, and cinematographer Emmanuel Lubezki convinced the director to leave it on. Now, we watched it, and the blood's there, and then the blood slowly disappears. So we did wonder. You knew that, didn't you, that blood was accidental, but then we thought, well, hang on a second, how are they managing to get rid of it?
I thought
it would be another shot, right?
That's right, and that's where you can tell where the thread is in the...
But it does fade out. Maybe they faded it out.
Yeah, it does a little bit, but he's walking up the stairs at that point.
There's speaking of guerrilla filmmaking, there's some bravura camera work in that scene. It doesn't matter that it's a one shot or not, but how they continue up the stairs, down some very, very narrow spaces, and somehow you know exactly where all the main players are at every single moment. How the extras are reacting to gunfire, they're reacting to Kia and her baby.
And not only that, there's the moment where Theo gets shot by Chiwetel Ejiofor. He's the one that kills Theo.
Yeah.
But you kind of get it. You get it, but then the scene moves on, and you don't. It's very well placed.
Yeah.
And if you're not watching closely, you won't notice. But if you are, it's there. It's all there. You know he's been shot, but you kind of don't because he's just moving on. And
that's right.
And I guess the baby moment happens, right? The quiet baby moment, and then that's a beautiful moment of sound with everybody quiet. We've talked about that. And then there's an explosion, and it's all back on, and their heads are down, and they're running to get to the boat.
Yes. Apparently, just to answer the question from before, they filmed between the 18th of November 2005 and sort of nearly middle of 2006. So that's interesting. So yeah, they went ahead and they shot it, and it was what it was. So yeah. Thank you for listening to another episode of Cinema in Context. If you enjoy our podcast, you should consider signing up to our Patreon. Cinema in Context patrons receive access to exclusive minisodes, opportunities for one-on-one discussions about the films you love, and our extended episode catalogue, including extended content of the episode you're listening to right now. We discuss our favourite moments from one or other of the films, things that we would do differently if we were the director, and a third film that would pair, or rather trio nicely with the ones that we've discussed. You can find out more at patreon.com/Cinema in Context. You can listen to Cinema in Context on SoundCloud, Spotify, Radio Public, Stitcher, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcasts. You can also follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, which are great places to let us know what you think of this episode, as well as give us suggestions for future films to discuss and compare. Look out for our next episode in a month's time, and until then, noho oramai!